I'm back out here on the bullpen today, and my goal is hopefully I can get, basically the entire perimeter done. All I've got left is to do a short bunk line feeder and then a short section of fence to get to the back of the barn, and then the perimeter fence part of the bullpen will be finished. The weatherman's calling for 105 degrees today, so I'm not really looking forward to being out here all day and all afternoon getting this done, but we got to do it. That's what's going on today on Farmer Tyler Ranch. This morning, most of the welding is going to take place inside the barn, so the fire danger isn't as bad, but nevertheless, I've still got my sprinkler going out here just because I've got too much to lose if a fire were to move, say, that way and get into my hay barn. You can see right here where I did have a little flare up the other day, and it's not a big deal when that happens. The fire doesn't spread rapidly because the weeds here, while they are dry, they're not tall, so it doesn't move super fast. But the danger here would be if one of these little flare-ups started and I didn't realize it for a little while, then it could kind of get out of control. I know in a lot of parts of the country this is not even a concern or anything that crosses your mind when you're doing outdoor welding, but out here in the West, this is a big deal. In one of my last videos, I talked a little bit about my in the field welding setup, the tools that I use, and one of the things is this chop saw that I absolutely love. This is called a dry cut chop saw, and it uses a carbide tipped tooth blade. A lot of people left comments showing interest in the saw and saying that they're going to go buy a blade like that, and I just wanted to make sure that people understand you can't just go buy a blade and put that on a regular chop saw. If you do that, you will burn that blade up in a heartbeat. These dry cut saws turn at about 1300 RPM, I think, so they spin pretty slow compared to an abrasive chop saw, which spins at around 4000 RPM. So you can see there's quite a big difference in how fast the saws run, and these carbide tipped tooth blades need to be on a slow running saw. I just don't want a bunch of people going out and spending $100+ on one of these blades and then burning it up after one cut. This oil pipe's pretty nasty. It's got a bunch of this, I'm not sure what that is, crude oil maybe, on it. And just getting that off with the flap disc is not, it works, but the problem is that you clog up your flap disc real quick. So I've been coming at this with a putty knife and scraping all the excess off, and then I'll come back and hit it with the flap wheel. So this first pipe is going to be the top of the bunk line feeder, and I'm running into a little bit of a snag here. See, the ground here is not level. It kind of is built up on the pen side, and I want to leave it built up because I don't want the bulls to be standing in the mud while they eat, but it's not level like this way. So if I make the top pipe level, then the feeder ends up being pretty tall on this side, and it ends up being pretty short on this side. And I'm kind of trying to figure out the best way to split the difference here, but the more I think about it, the more I think that maybe this is a good thing, because, like, for instance, my what will be weaned bull calf that will be the first bull to stay in here, he's only going to be like 500, maybe 600 pounds when he comes into this pen. So it might be good to have a short side of the feeder, and then next year when he spends the winter in here, he'll be a lot bigger. He'll be able to eat down here on the tall side. With my top pipe horizontal, that will That'll fit up good on this side for the fence that goes to the end of the barn. But what happens is now my pipes don't line up on this post. And guys, it just really pains me when the pipes don't line up. But I guess when you look at this, it's pretty obvious that it was intentional and not a mistake. So I guess I don't know why that matters to me, but it does. And another thing that I noticed I'm dealing with here is this pipe is magnetized. When pipe is magnetized, you get what's called arc blowout, and it's really hard to like run a steady arc. So I've been reading up a little bit on how to deal with that, and a couple of things that were suggested. One was like wrapping the ground cable around the pipe. I'm not really sure. I could try that, I guess. The other is just moving your ground, tapping the pipe with a hammer. Well, that's easy. I can do that. Heating up the joint before you weld it. Well, I don't really have, I don't have an acetylene torch here right now or anything that I could use to heat this pipe. But I think what I will do is I'll go around and tack it in like 4 to 5 places around the pipe. And that should act as heating the pipe, you know, because those tacks, I forget what the temperature of a weld arc is. It's like 1200 degrees or something like that. So if I just get a couple of good tacks all the way around the pipe, then I think that will be sufficient to preheat it. All these different things that I tried to kind of combat the magnetized pipe, they helped, but they didn't cure it completely. Made it good enough though that I felt like I was able to get pretty good welds on these pipes. So I don't know which one's the most effective. Maybe all of them working together is the way to go. I don't know, but we've got our kind of main frame here for the bunk line feeder done, and I wanted to talk a little bit about dimensions in case someone wants to build something like this. The thing that you need to keep in mind though is that these dimensions that I'm going to give you, they are what have worked well for my size cattle. So if you're running something that's smaller or bigger or whatever, you might want to adjust the numbers a little bit. But usually I try to get the top rail of the feeder at about 55 inches off the ground. That's give or take. You know, think about where your cattle's shoulders are. You kind of want this like right at or a little bit above where their withers would be. The next pipe down is roughly from center to center, it's about 30 inches down. The reason that I go with that measurement is that it seems to work out pretty good for, you know, the height of their necks on the bottom, but then also on this fence, these pipes are 15 inches apart on center. So then it, you know, if we were on flat ground, this would all line up nicely. Basically, you just want to make this top rail so that they're not hitting it with their shoulders, and make the bottom rail so that they can reach their heads down to the ground without, like, you know, strangling themselves on it. If you're wondering why I made this so long, I mean, we're going to have enough room to make like probably 8 or 10 head slots here. You never know what the future holds, and you never know what I might want to use this pen for in addition to housing bulls. I even had a thought the other day that it might just be easier to put the bulls in with the steers and then put the replacement heifers in this pen, you know, and then I'd have like 4 or 5 of them eating here. So I don't know. But I don't like to rule anything out, and if I make the feeder a little bit longer like this, I'll have options. We got all the angled slats welded, well, not welded in, but they're tacked in, and everything worked out pretty good. I thought I had this dialed in so that my last slat was gonna meet up, you know, right in the corner, but things ended up pushing down a little further than I expected, so I had to make a little custom cut there to make that fit. But all in all, this actually looks pretty good. And I don't know what I was thinking before, thinking there would be 8 to 10 slots here. There's only 5, which again is still going to be plenty. So let's talk a little bit about the dimensions of everything and what I've got here. So these slats, as I call them, are on a 65-degree angle, and as it works out, they're about 30 inches long, or a little over 30. Normally for cattle, I will space these angled slats 18 inches apart on center. But because this is going to be used for feeding bulls, and as we all know, bulls have really wide, fat necks, I made these a little bit wider. They're 19 inches, which doesn't sound like a whole heck of a lot, but I didn't really want to go any wider than that because then it makes too big of a gap. When you have like a yearling or a younger, smaller one in here, you don't want, you know, a big gap like that. So 19 was kind of the compromise. It's a little bit better than what they would have got out in the big corral. After I finish getting these angled slats welded in, the only thing that will be left to do is to fill this gap down here on the bottom. And the way that I've done that in the past, and yeah, it's worked pretty well and been pretty cost effective, is just to weld some pieces of angle iron on this post and then on the other post down at the end, and then put a board. So I'll do 3 2x8s. That'll fit in there just about perfect. Boy, I tell you what, it's hot today. I mean, real hot. Weather app says it's 104. I think it's actually a little bit hotter working inside the shed here because I'm getting radiant heat off of all this tin, and I don't have really a lot of air movement in here. And because it's so hot, and I'm actually starting to run out of water, and I pretty much got done what I was wanting to get done. I mean, I wanted to get a little bit more done. I was hoping to get the pipes all the way down to the end, and obviously none of this is finished welding yet. But all the thinking is pretty much done here. I just got to come back in with some welding rod and get this finished up. So I think I'm going to call it here. If this video is a little bit short, I apologize, but man, I just can't keep going in this heat. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys, and I hope I'll see you again on Farmer Tyler Ranch. Are you hot? Ready to go home?